Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Hey, friend.
Hey.
I'm kind of crusty right now.
Uh-oh. Why?
Because the Lions lost Wait, what happened? They did lose yesterday, didn't they?
They lost, yes.
They lost to the Commanders.
No. Oh, yes.
Yes, and I think the Eagles just won today, too.
Did they? Oh, I didn't know that.
And to all my Commander and Eagles colleagues, if I'm hurting your feelings, I don't care. I'm a Cowboys fan, America's team, chaps my hide. I wanted the Lions and I wanted the Rams, and the exact opposite has happened.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have no words of comfort for you because I have zero opinion on the matter. So
I think you are being neutral Nelly. Because clearly you're a Cowboys fan. You're in Texas.
Oh, actually, this would offend your husband to know that we've somehow raised a son that is a fan of the Buffalo Bills.
What?
I know.
How? Why?
He watched a documentary on the Buffalo Bills recently when they went to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row and lost all 4 times.
I think that's why I should be in Camp Buffalo Bills, but
You want to root for the losers, you know?
Which is why I wanted to root for the Lions.
I know. But yeah, so we're I guess kind of secretly rooting for the Buffalo Bills. How about that?
Yeah, maybe. I definitely don't want the Chiefs to have a three-peat.
I definitely, as much as I love Taylor, I don't care about that. So they don't need to go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, if anybody's still listening, because I'm sure I've offended everybody now, except all my America's team folks. I'm sure y'all are still here and feeling my pain right now.
The 2 of them.
Stupid Eagles. Yeah. Stop it now. 2 of them. Do you want to do this podcast today or not? Because I'm about to sign off here too. I told you I was crusty. 2 of them. Anywho, I wanted to talk about, back to business. I wanted to talk about, because we're getting ready in my office, like you're about to help me with our compensation reviews, which we always do in February. Not the most glamorous topic, for sure. I'd rather talk about football and the Super Bowl. However, I think we've talked some, especially the last podcast, we just talked about asking for a raise, which, on all aspects. But I think that was a very important episode as well, and hopefully had some good nuggets for everybody. But I think now, talking about the compensation review, I kind of wanted to talk to you personally about, wait, now what do we need to do to get ready again for this? Yeah. And then I thought, why don't we just turn it into a podcast? So unless you had a better idea.
This is perfect timing. And I feel like it's perfect coming on the heels of how to ask for a raise, because I feel like we were already on the topic of compensation. We're just going to take it from a different vantage point, and I think that's perfect.
Okay. So, and I know we've hit on this before, but I just want to kind of get it clear in my mind as well, and kind of just as a starting point, maybe compensation reviews different from a performance review.
Correct.
So can we start there, and you just kind of remind me again what's the difference and why?
So compensation review and performance reviews, in my mind, should always be separate. I would say most of the time I see that they're together, and I don't like that because of a couple of reasons. Number one, when performance reviews and compensation reviews are tied together, I find that the employee receiving the performance feedback is not listening to the feedback. Their mind is on the compensation part. Like, when do we get to the compensation? Let's talk about the good stuff. And so they're not really actually receiving the feedback. So that's my number one reason. And number 2 is it's 2 very intense, deep subject matters, and to pair those together is tiring. Do yourself a favor, separate those out so that you can prep for the one from a performance standpoint, and then it's a completely different train of thought in so many ways to prepare for the compensation review.
Because I think in my mind that they go hand in hand. So it's kind of opposite of what you're saying. Because to me, I'm like, but you're not getting a raise if your performance isn't good. So shouldn't we talk about your performance and why you are or are not getting a raise?
Yeah, and you should. So I think this is where it's not that performance and compensation shouldn't go together. It's that performance review should never be combined with a compensation review. because the employee will not be focused on. So you can talk about performance in the compensation review, but it's not going to replace their performance review. And the employee needs to be very public knowledge to the employee. By the way, your performance review is completely separate from your compensation review, so that when they come into the actual quote unquote performance review, they are only thinking performance, because they know, and it's been made very clear to them, that compensation is not coming up at this meeting. So it clears the waters where they can focus on.
So I think the first time we did that, like, I want to say we did it 1 or 2 times in my office, and I don't know that I quite got that distinction. It's after doing it, and luckily you were there coaching me through that, but I think for me, it finally dawned on me, maybe the second time, possibly not till the third time, but it was like, oh, I see what we're doing here. Because to me, again, they're both just so married together. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But to me then, as I saw you conducting the compensation review, it was more like, this is your total package here. And I like that, because I would hear like my friends or my sisters talk about like their compensation packages in other offices, which maybe that was part of my reason of why I didn't connect it, was because early on in the years of the practice, maybe up until year 6, 7, we didn't have a compensation package. It was just your hourly. Like, that's all it was.
Yeah.
And so as we were growing as a practice and being able to offer more things, and the reason we wanted to offer more things was the retention part of it. And so that became, wait a minute, hold on. You do get these extra things.
Yeah.
And after having an employee or two leaving because they thought they wanted the $1.02 per hour raise. And I'm like, wait a minute, but it's like they didn't know that. They weren't thinking about it from a total compensation standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that's when I was like, okay, that's the benefit of doing this separate, because we can remind them and say, yeah, you might be making $10 an hour, but actually when you factor in everything you've made this year, you're actually getting compensated at $13.19 per hour.
Yeah.
And you're missing that. And frankly, I'm kind of missing it too. I don't think about that. I still think about you at your hourly rate too. You've had to stop me a few times where I'm like, okay, I know this person's going to ask for a raise. Can I go ahead and raise them to 11? And you're like, Kuba, you're already paying them 13. And I'm like, I am? And it's because I wasn't thinking about all this. It was a good reminder for everybody. So I guess I would say, if you don't have other things, this is where I would encourage you, like, as soon as you can, make more things that retain and are attractive to your employees.
Yes.
So that would be the next question is, can you really not afford it? Or are you shooting yourself in the foot because you're ending up having to replace employees, and every employee that comes in is asking for a higher hourly, in which case you could get away with not having to give that if you had other means of, like, for example, if you offered a 401k, but some of that is a tax benefit to you as well. So is that not the smarter way? And so these are all more questions for CPA. I, by all means, am not a math person or a strategic businessy person, but even I get that.
Yeah.
Like, there might be other ways to compensate, and I get a tax cut, and I retain my employees.
Yeah.
As opposed to, no, I can't afford to give you anything. Even our medical, like, you know, I give like a stipend towards medical. We've done it different ways for years, but now, like, I can say that I offer it, but I want to say there's 3 people on my whole team who take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So I'm coming out ahead there. And I can look at their total package, and if they're asking for a higher hourly, but they've never participated in the medical, maybe I will give them a little higher hourly, but maybe I won't, because I'm like, well, but you could take advantage. So it gives you more options to even protect yourself.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us miss that. So to me, that's what I like about this compensation review, is because we're talking, it doesn't have to be any of the negative. I think that's the other reason I like it, just because the people pleasing me is like, okay, good. We don't have to give you any negative feedback. This is all about, look what this practice does for you.
Yes.
So it's a chance to brag on ourselves without coming right out and saying it, because I let you say it for me. But it's a chance to say, this is what the practice is doing for you. And then it's also like, tell me your goals.
Yes.
And we learn so much from that, and it helps us from a strategic standpoint. And so everybody who's sitting there cringing at that, going, I don't want to know your goals, and I don't want to be responsible for making you meet your goals, or I don't want to be the one responsible because you didn't meet your goals. Like, I've felt all of that before too, but it really is really beneficial if you're listening to what they're saying, and then it helps inform strategic decisions throughout the year. I will say, I may have missed out on some of those like clues, but like you going, hold on a minute here, she said this. Yeah. Why can't? So we're back to, again, if you don't have a Bethany, how do you, like, if you're like, okay, I've gathered all this information, but I don't know what to do with it, we can try to talk about some of that here.
Yeah.
So that you do have some nuggets of which to go, okay, I see where I could keep the ball rolling.
Right.
So I think that to me is, now that I'm remembering, that's where for me I really had a hard time between going, I don't get what you're saying to me. Mm-hmm. How is it not a performance review? But it's not.
Yeah.
At least at this point too, because we do offer so many other things. Now, I guess the other thing I would say is if you don't offer, maybe that's your chance to say, hey, what do you think is important to you?
Right.
Like, what would help retain you? Mm-hmm. And maybe you're not able to do it that year, but at least you can look into it.
Yeah. You can say, I'm making my own goals, and I know that additional benefits are very important to team members. I want to know, out of these 3 options, my goal is to add one of these 3 options at some point this year, as soon as I financially can. What would be your preference and why? I'm trying to understand what one's going to be the best one for my team. That's a great conversation to have, and it fits perfectly within the tone of this conversation, because I would say the tone is also very different in a performance review versus a compensation review. The compensation review feels like business to me. It's numbers, it's facts, it's data, it's informative for both parties, the practice owner and also the employee. And so it just feels like a very clear, clean cut conversation. And so within that, to ask, hey, I'm making my own goals, I'd love to add a benefit this year, it fits very nicely into this financially motivated conversation. If you were to kind of bring that up in an individual performance review, it's not the right subject matter. The subject matter in that is, we're looking at your performance as an employee and what you need to do to improve. A lot
more subjective.
Yes, it's very loose boundaries, and we don't know where that conversation is going to go. This clear, clean, very packaged data is a perfect place to bring up additional benefits that we might add.
So 2 thoughts there. One, I think the other thing that I like about it is it makes you feel more professional and like a company. Mm-hmm. And so to start getting your employees to start thinking about, this isn't just like my place of work, it's just the one doc and 5 of us that work here, we're just this office or this clinic. It's like, no, we're a business.
Yeah. And
when people start thinking about, no, I'm a contributor, if this business, another business is Target, another business is Starbucks, my dental office that I work for is a place of business, that does change some mindset for people. So it does add that color of professionalism. And then I think the other thing you said was, it's clean, it's objective, the numbers, the data. I think that's the part that I start going, where do I start? So can we kind of segue into that now and go, okay, for anybody who's not done one of these or is afraid of doing it, and it just went, okay, what do you mean by data and numbers? I don't even know where to start. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
It really is. It's straight math. And so let's talk about a concept that I like to call effective hourly wage. So we've got the $10 an hour on everybody's pay stub. It shows your hourly wage is $10 per hour. But then we roll in this concept of an effective hourly wage. So in your particular practice, we'll use yours as an example. You have multiple additional benefits. You've got holiday pay, paid time off. You've got the health benefit plan. You've got the 401k plan with matching. You've got bonuses. You've got the mental health component where you can, do counseling. You've got team outings and gifts and things like that. So you have a very diverse package is what I would say. So let's assume that we're trying to figure out Sally's effective hourly wage. To me, we've got to be really fair in how we do the math here. So I do not include anything in the effective hourly wage that did not go into a bank account, whether that was their physical everyday bank account or their 401 retirement bank account. I don't count things like Dr. Kuba bought new scrubs for everybody, so let's rope that into your total compensation. Now, you can make an argument that if Dr. Kuba didn't buy scrubs, you would have had to buy your own scrubs. So in theory, you save them money. I don't like to artificially inflate these numbers. I don't want to go, oh, your hourly is $10, but we found all this stuff that we could add to your total compensation, and now you make $17 an hour. And then the person on the other side is going, no, I don't, because I wouldn't have bought my own scrubs. I would have used hand-me-downs from other people. I wouldn't have gone to Jade Waters and hung out at the pool on my own. So that was a really nice benefit, but I wouldn't have done it if Dr. Kuba didn't pay for it. So you don't want this to turn into an argument about how that's not their actual effective hourly wage. You only want to use things that went into their bank account. So for me, those categories are your hourly wage plus any bonuses that were given out through the year or financial gifts, like an end of year bonus. Some people may not do bonuses throughout the year, but they'll do an end of year Christmas bonus or something like that. That went into a bank account. PTO and holiday pay is a part of the compensation package, and I'll talk about how to do the math on that in a minute. And then the health benefit plan, to me, any money that the doctor is contributing to that health benefit plan counts. So if you pay $200 of the $500 premium, well, that's $200 they didn't have to pay. So that would be counted into their compensation package. And then the last thing would be the 401k or retirement plan. If I don't count what they put into it, I only count what the doctor contributed into that 401k account. So that sounds like a lot of math, so let me break it down really simply. If at the end of the year, Sally's hourly wage got her $10,000, then we would add on, Sally got a Christmas bonus of $500. So now Sally's total compensation for the year is $10,500. Also, Sally participates in the medical plan, and the doctor pays $200 a month. Okay, so that's another $2,400 that Sally would have had to pay that she didn't have to pay. So now we're at $10,500 plus $2,400. You'll have to help me do math here.
$12,900.
Thank you. So $12,900, and that's it. Let's assume that that's all she gets. There's no vacation, there's no holiday pay, nothing like that. We would take $12,900 and we would divide it by the number of hours that Sally worked that year.
So where do I find that number? How do I know how many hours she worked that year?
So that should be within your payroll system. You should be able to easily pull a report, or if you run it through your CPA, your CPA should be able to pull the total hours worked. It is often collecting information on each paycheck. So if you pulled the last paycheck that you paid Sally, it would be on there. So it will be.
So it's easy enough to find.
Very easy.
I think that, to me, when you first say that, I'm like, how the hell do I know how many? Like, I got to go back and add up all the hours for every payroll I've submitted. No, it's being tracked by your software system.
That's right.
Could you, like, for us in Dentrix, could you go to the time clock and put in the day, like, January 1st to December 31st?
You could.
And it would take it a minute, but it would tell you how many hours.
It would tell you how many hours.
That might be a quick and dirty, easy way of doing it if you don't want to pull a report off of your, whatever that, QuickBooks or wherever.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, either through your if you have them clock in and out through through your software, then it'll be there, or your payroll system, either place. It's relatively easy information to find. Sometimes you'll have to do a little bit of math if you're matching what they contribute to their 401k. Sometimes that's not in a neat place. You're having to go and find how much did I contribute again this year. in order to add that in. But really, if you look at the nuts and bolts of it, it is simple math. You take their gross, and by the way, that's gross pay. So you take their gross pay, which is the bigger number, before all the taxes are taken out. You take the gross pay plus any additional bonus, health premium that the doctor paid, not the total premium, because the employee paid some of that. And then if the doctor contributed. Now, if you are an office that has holiday pay or vacation, PTO, then let's say that Sally, let's go back to our example and say Sally had a week of PTO. That's going to show up in her gross pay. That $10,000 for the year, her PTO is included in that gross pay. So you're going to have to do a little homework and go extrapolate out how much of that $10,000 was PTO. And so what I do is I actually subtract that out of the $10,000 and I put that as a separate line item so that the employee can see, hey, you got to go to Jamaica. That is so fantastic. And during that week that you were in Jamaica, you were still able to earn $500 that week. So it's still showing in the total, but it's a separate benefit type line item. And so then when you and I sit together with employees, it's all on this Excel spreadsheet that your CPA created. That's amazing. But we are able to just go through line by line and talk through each benefit. We try to do a little bit of explaining why that benefit is important, why we added that in whenever we added it in. And we use it as a reminder of the benefits that are available. So for some newer employees, last year when we sat down and did this, I remember talking about the 401k plan with a few employees at that time that were still fuzzy on what is it and what does it mean she contributes. I was able to pull up examples from just a neutral example that I have saved, and to show, I would do the math on that spreadsheet and show, look at this. If you contributed $200 a month to your 401k, Dr. Kuba would also contribute $200, and look at what it does to your effective hourly. And I would put that $2,400 in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that jumps you up $2 per hour, because that is money going into your retirement bank account. So it's fun to kind of inform, like you're financially advising them on all the options that they have available. Even the counseling, which a lot of people take advantage of from time to time in your office. But I remind them, like, hey, don't forget, it's a line item on here. It's not included in your compensation, so it's not affecting your hourly wage, but there's a line item here that shows, that as a reminder that that's a benefit for you. So it's just you're right, it feels like a very business thing to do, to sit down with the employee. They know once a year they're going to get to see what all they earned and what they're contributing, what are they participating in, what are they not participating in, what are their options for participating in on those things. So it's a very informative conversation.
So just nuts and bolts though, I would say, like, if you are like, I don't have a CPA that helps me with this, and I don't have a Bethany that helps me with this, how do I get started? I would say you need to figure out like where you find their last pay stub for each employee. And hopefully you've got one that shows like December 31st, that last pay stub. And then go to the one that includes January 1st. So that way you've got the year's worth of on that final pay stub. And then whatever their gross total was at the end of the year, you've got that number. And then you've got the number if your software tracked, if your payroll software tracked the number of hours and it's on that paper, great, then you've got it right there. If not, you might have to go into your time clock, do the same thing, January 1st to December 31st of that year, and see what it pulls up for the number of hours that they clocked in for. And then you take the gross and divide it by the number of hours worked. And that is keeping it simple. And then if you look at, like if they had PTO or vacation days, and depending on where you put that in, you might need to subtract that out and go from there. But I think for me, even if we're not even talking about 401k and matching, but even we talked about this briefly last time in the last podcast about asking for pay. If I remember correctly, I think we talked about this, but we had an employee that even just down to the number of hours, like you can see then, because you're pulling up and looking at it, if you're making your own paper, like I make my own notes, even though we have the spreadsheet, but I'm allergic to spreadsheets. So I let you deal with that. But just on my own, I kind of keep track on a piece of paper, and I'm like, okay, I just like to see it on paper. And I'm like, okay, so-and-so made $10,000 this year and they worked 1,200 hours. And this person made 13,000 and they worked, 1,300 hours, like whatever it is. And you start seeing the trends and you're like, yeah, you're right. Like all of these people that I recognize being there a lot, not calling out a lot, not taking a lot of vacation, whatever, they all had the highest number of hours. And then you've got another employee that you're like, you didn't make very much. And that's another fun one to go, okay, yeah, you made this much. Well, you were kind of off this week, or you didn't plan your vacation right. Mm-hmm. Like we have peak time penalties in our office, and it's like, you took your vacation, you took your 5-year wedding anniversary vacation right in the middle of 4th of July. Well, who really cares about your 5-year anniversary? Like that it has to be celebrated in July. If I was you, the smart thing would be like go in August or September when vacation places are cheaper, flights are cheaper, they're less crowded. Like you're going to save personally by not going at peak times.
Right.
That's just in general thinking. But then you were penalized this many days, so it cost you $800 of pay that you could have gotten if you had just gone in September or August. Now, maybe your husband was making you go during that week, but to me, I don't think you thought about it. You were zero strategy. Let's not do that again next year, because if you had gone a little bit later, then you could have, like your husband would have been happier because he would have spent less money, again, on hotel, airfare, all of that. But you would have also gotten paid more.
Yeah.
And then you would have worked this many more hours. So just by showing up to work more, and it's fun, like you said, on a spreadsheet that you mastermind, because it's fun for me to just see the output, but you put it in and to kind of show them, like, it's nice to be able to show them, like, this is where this could change.
Yes.
Or for the ones that are squabbling for $1 or $2 more per hour, okay, let's do that. Well, if you're going to work about the same, this is going to make about $1,000 difference for the year.
Yeah.
So let's divide that out. You made $3 more a day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we could do that, but what are some other more strategic ways? And sometimes to me, I'm like, you know what, this is not even worth the squabble. Go ahead, here's your $1 an hour. I look like the hero.
Right.
But I think if I am really looking at helping you, let's be strategic about this. How can we get you there?
Yeah. It's really interesting when I think back on some of the conversations that have come up in these meetings. Like the hours is such a great example. I remember us talking with an employee that really she had a annual goal in her mind that she wanted to be at, and she was short of that goal, but she was also short hours.
Like significant, like 200 hours less than everybody else.
And we just paused and had that conversation. We're like, listen, that's the beauty of working at this office, is that you really can't. You can work 200 hours less. You have that kind of flexibility here, which you don't have. In a lot of practices, you sit down and everybody's pay is within 50 hours of each other because they work the exact same times. That flexibility is not there. So that's a huge benefit. That it may not be showing financially, but that's a huge benefit that you're able to...
From a work-life balance standpoint, a culture standpoint.
So we want you to have that, and we want you to keep that if that's what you want. But also, we're telling you, you've got the freedom to close the gap on that 200 hours. And you can absolutely work the 1,700 hours that everybody else is working. And by the way, let's just put in the math, and let's see if you would have done that this year, what that would have yielded you. Whoa, look at that. You would have been past your financial goal. So to me, it's a conversation that is so mathematical that it's easy to make difficult suggestions like that. Like if we're just like sitting there, no spreadsheet, no numbers, and we're like, okay, so what are your financial goals? Well, man, I really want to make $30,000 this year. And we're going, holy crap, they're $8,000 off from that. And we're like, and we know she didn't work very much. She was gone all the time, constantly taking off. It's hard for us to go, oh, we would love for you to hit your goal. If you worked more, you would totally hit that. We've kind of done some numbers behind the scene. Just work more and you would get it. That's like almost borderline offensive. But when you just put in the numbers, you're like, how could we get you to that goal? Let's play around with some numbers here. It's a very mathematical and not offensive conversation. So it allows us to bring up subjects like that that, first of all, we wouldn't bring up anyway because we don't know the person's goals or financially what they're pushing for. But second of all, it would be very awkward for us to say, yeah, we've been wondering if you wanted to make money or not because you never work. Well, that's awkward. But on a spreadsheet, playing around with numbers, it's very easy to do that. So I think there's some interesting conversations that come out of this.
We kind of touched on this, I think, if I remember correctly, on the last episode about asking for a raise. But this is where, again, where sometimes I think and I go, okay, yeah, we're not the 8 to 5 Monday through Friday office. And so, what if it is somebody that's there 3.5 days, but they're saying they want to make this one financial goal and they want to work more, but I'm like, but what would I give you to do in between? And so I think that's where it's kind of been fun, or even if not fun, at least enlightening to both parties. Yeah. Because if it's somebody where I'm like, you're only good chairside.
Yeah.
I've asked you to write these cards and you can't help but typo all of them.
Yeah.
Even though you're copying the name from the chart itself, like you still mess that up, or you still, whatever it may be, like you have proven that chairside, you are a people person, you need to be sitting next to somebody and handing any instruments and doing that. You're fantastic at that, but clerical stuff is just not your cup of tea. Well, so in my mind, I'm going, shoot, if that person asks for the 40 hours a week,
right,
but I only see patients 3.5 days, what am I going to do? But at that point, that's where we get to put on our creative caps. Yeah. And that's where we go, okay, well, what can you do? What can we? Maybe I've just tapped into the wrong clerical tasks for you.
Right.
You tell me what you come up with. But at the same time, it's always happened where it's always at the same time, it's like, yeah, you're really good at answering phones too. We could come up with a protocol for you, because I think what you forget is, you forget to get their address or whatever, their social security number, but we'll make a cheat sheet for you. Now you get stumped if they ask you about pricing. Okay, that's okay. Then we'll say, well, somebody will call you with that and whatever. Oh, but wait, you can't do it after 2:30 because you've got to go pick up your kids. Okay.
Yes.
So it's like back in your court. You are the limitation, not me. I'm trying to work with you. And this is where we are. So it's like, okay, then do you have childcare different this year? Is your kid riding the bus different this year? Is dad's hours more flexible? Like, where are we? And sometimes they can make that work. And sometimes they're like, oh, you know what? You're right. We went from elementary school to middle school, and I hadn't even considered some of these options.
Yes.
And sometimes they're like, oh no, it's me. And that realization is very nice too, because then it's like, they're not blaming me for that. They're recognizing that it's their own limitation, but it gives us a chance to kind of brainstorm.
Yeah. Hey friends, I'm going to do something that you will one day thank me for. And that is, I'm going to stop today's episode. We have another 30 minutes of content that goes on and just dives into deeper and deeper issues related to these compensation reviews. It is phenomenal content, and you definitely don't want to miss it. But that content is reserved for our amazing and wonderful subscribers. So if you'd like this additional content, we encourage you to go to the show notes, click to subscribe, and one day you are going to thank me for leaving you on yet again another cliffhanger. Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone. But we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.